Vampire War for the Second City is a Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition actual play podcast presented by DM Fiat, with I, Dale, as storyteller. Please be advised that this podcast contains descriptions of gore, depravity, addiction, coercion, and other adult themes. This is not D&D. This is a game where we play monsters of the night who do monstrous things. They're all around you.
The following events take place between episode 16 and episode 20 of Vampire War for the Second City. Chimera's beast is restless. It's gloating, taunting her. She's been trying to resist its call with all her willpower these last couple of nights. She's given in before, and it's never gone well for her. There's a string of failed relationships, prospective friends turn enemies, and nights being chewed out by her sire. She can look back on for proof of that. And yet, this time, it feels so right. She's still riding the high from capturing Patient Zero with Vince and his coterie. They didn't just talk the talk, they walked the walk too. Got shit done, just like her sire said. And they're proof that sometimes, if you know what you're fighting for, violence can be a useful tool to change the status quo. They've kindled the fire within her. So, here Chimera is tonight, in her haven, this cramped self-storage locker that barely has room for a mattress for her to crash on and a footlocker of her most cherished possessions. She decides to give in to the beast. She doesn't need Vince and the others to effect change. She's gonna go out tonight, find someone who deserves to be punched in the face, and clean up the streets, make this shithole world a little better. There's bound to be some scum out there just waiting to be taught a lesson. Chimera makes a wits plus streetwise check to see who she turns up. She hits the streets and asks around a bit, tapping some old contacts and trying to sniff out any leads. She learns about a guy in St. Kilda who goes by the name Ronnie White. Word on the street is that he's an ice dealer, and he has a reputation for selling product that's cheap and low quality. At least 3 people have died from overdoses after taking his shit. But he's well connected enough in the criminal underworld that he's never had to answer for it. Chimera figures this guy will be pretty easy to find, if she wanted to, and she's not afraid of his friends, no matter how bad they claim to be. She'd probably have to bring along some extra muscle just in case, but if Chimera's learned one thing about herself, it's that she's good at riling up people when she needs to. Given the recent boost to her ego from taking down a full-blooded vampire without any real damage, itching to show off to herself, Chimera thinks that this would be a great person to make an example of. After all, she's never had any issues with taking down some shitheads on the street in the past with miscreants from her regular group. No, it's better if he puts up a fight, she thinks to herself, tightening her fists and flexing them. Give me a chance to show someone what I'm made of. Plus, how dangerous could mortals be? It'd be like wiping mud off her boots either way. Chimera's beast purrs as she decides that this man is her target. She spends about an hour trawling Facebook and Instagram, trying to get a feel for the guy. She finds a profile for someone called Ronald White, who lives in St. Kilda, and she's a little surprised at how normal he looks, at least according to the photos he shows to the public. Doesn't look like a crook at all. Instead, he's a relatively clean-cut guy in his early 30s who seems to have a great love of AFL. Most of the pictures she finds of him posing in front of football memorabilia or selfies taken at games, but this has to be him, she decides. The name is right, the location is right. Who cares what he looks like? Chimera's been through enough to know that even the most charming exterior can hide true evil. She grabs her gear and sets out into the night. Getting a bit ahead of herself, stepping out to the dark streets with an intense drive, she slows her pace and starts to fume a little that she's roadblocked herself into this. She starts to talk to herself. This prick can't be so hard to find. Or at least he wouldn't be if he didn't like every other dipshit who likes football. As if she lost an argument with herself, she pulls up WhatsApp on her phone and puts in a message to Prefix, one of the less hands-on members of the crew of vigilantes that she runs with. He's usually good at finding marks for the group and narrowing in on high-crime streets based on God knows what information he manages to find. If anyone can find out something about someone based on their Instagram, it's probably him. Prefix is still a lame alias, though. Swiping furiously and walking in the general direction of St. Kilda, she types, "Hey dude, found some prick who needs a raising. Handle attached. You got 5 to get the goods on him?" Chimera rolls a Charisma plus Streetwise check, adding her contacts. She doesn't have to wait long. Prefix knows what he's doing. Her phone vibrates 10 minutes later, and she's been sent an address and a screen cap from Google Maps. A double-storey red brick McMansion out in East St. Kilda. She sees 2 cars in the newly paved driveway, both of them no more than a couple years old. It's your typical upper-middle-class bougie palace. "I ran his name through my database, and this is the address that came up," says Prefix's reply. "If he's dealing, though, he probably has some local haunts we can try to dig up. Up to you. I know you don't mind making some noise in the suburbs." Chimera replies, "Check to see if he's got a usual hangout where he might stash his product and where his mates might hang out. Cheers. See you at next gaff. Owe you a drink." She can always count on the crew to get things done. Speaking of which, she opens a group message to the last group she went out with. There's always a new group message every time a new area is shaken down so that members can keep in touch. She barely knows this lot, but they managed to shake down 3 or 4 small-timers and teach him a lesson last week. Probably just in time, too. The chat's usually in an archive mode and deleted around a week later. Picking up the pace, taking back streets where nobody but homeless folks and street cats spend their nights. She jogs along. "Good work last week, guys. Got to lay on something much bigger this time. Might really make the difference at this one. Who wants to do some good?" Trailing with a sword and gun emoji. It's not really her style, but Chimera knows how the vigilantes think. It's a lot of posturing, and if she can play the game to get them feeling it, they'll show up. Kick his ass, mess up his office, teach any of his bozo friends a lesson, and it will be a well-deserved party afterwards. If she's lucky, maybe she'll even feel good about herself afterwards. She makes a Charisma plus Performance check to see if she can rile the crew up. Gets 3 successes on the initial check, flooding the chat with a stream of venom about Ronnie White, how the stuff he sells is watered down, how 3 families lost daughters so he could make a quick buck, and nobody else will do anything about it because they're too chicken shit. Before long, the vigilantes in the chat are baying for blood. Prefixes mobilizing the crew, and tonight they're going to paste someone to a wall. Chimera gives them a while to hit the streets and do their own thing, see what they could shake up before she commits to things. It doesn't take long at all to get the goods. Word on the streets is that the drugs are kept in a safe in his house, but Ronnie White hangs out at a pub down the road most nights as well, probably dealing to the degenerates playing the pokies. Chimera is giddy like a schoolgirl and stamps on the spot with her fists tight to her chest. It's always a rush to be part of something meaningful. Her excitement is palpable and her heart would be beating in her chest, if indeed it still did beat. Each time always feels so good. She takes a moment to bask in it, looking up at the stars, and in her own chaotic way feels peaceful. The moment is quickly over as the hype starts to come to a head, and she doesn't want to lose it. There's something magnetic about being part of a crowd, especially when you know in your heart that you're making the world a better place, a safer place. Someone has to clean up, someone has to keep people safe. The moment starts to fade as she dwells on it too long. Flashes of her past fill her mind, and she physically recoils. No, she tells herself, that's not what this is about. It's about justice. Tonight is about justice. Justice and proving she has the ability to take control of the world and fix it. Shaking herself and trying to pump herself back up, she goes to find the crowd. They're probably thirsty by this point. Why not make a stop by the pub first? Have a few before we shake down the small fry, she thinks. Could even work as good cover. It's about justice for those poor girls. And this time, Chimera's sure she's fighting for the right reasons. She tells the crew to meet her at the pub, that she plans to grab a few drinks, bide her time and wait to see if Ronnie White turns up. When she gets to the pub, she cringes at the display of mediocrity before her. There's a big billboard with tab written on it, and a Word 95 tier clip art of a ripped man holding a footy. The entire building is bathed in an orange glow, and through the windows she can see a sea of the same generic middle-class white guy replicated 50 times. All of them transfixed, trance-like, upon a plasma TV on the wall showing the highlights of tonight's game. Beyond that, there's the gaming room, cast in near-total darkness, ambient light from the pokie machines illuminating the faces of men who are dead inside. Within a few minutes, Chimera spots Prefix's white van pulling into the car park. The door slides open and the crew steps out, all four of them dressed for the night's occasion, chains and switchblades barely concealed under their baggy clothing. They all silently greet each other, and then Chimera enters the pub with the group trailing behind her. She finds the one table that isn't already occupied, and then one of the crew calls over a waitress and orders a round of drinks for everyone, then another, just in case they're stuck waiting after that. Chimera rouses the blood, spreading colour into her face, activating the blush of life so she can blend in and knock back drinks with the crew. Now, she thinks, play the waiting game. She goes through a third round of drinks, and the crew are starting to get restless. "Where the fuck's this piece of shit? I'm about to..." mutters the guy next to her under his breath. In the background, a raucous cheer drowns out the rest of his words as someone scores a goal on the TV. Then finally, it's go time. Another crew member hisses, "Shh," points towards the front entrance. Chimera whirls around to see Ronnie White step inside with two other men. He looks the same as he does on Facebook, complete with his Bombers jersey. He points to the gaming room, just beyond Chimera and the group, then turns to his companions. "Go and find us some machines, boys. I'm gonna order the usual, have a ciggy, and then I'll join you." The two men nod and leave him to make his way back to the bar, alone. Chimera watches as Ronnie places an order with the girl behind the counter, then reaches into his pocket, pulls out a pack of cigarettes, makes his way back to the entrance, exiting to the car park. Chimera flashes a stern look at the others, gauging how they feel. It's clear they're literally about to do this right here, right now, but like a pack of wild animals. This needs to be cleaner than that, though, she thinks, bringing her glass down and slapping it gracelessly on the table to get everyone's attention. She shoots daggers at them. She notices one of them start to sweat a little, but she has their attention. Keeping her voice below that of the TV playing the game, she gestures with her head towards the two men heading to the pokies. "You reckon you dipsticks can take 'em?" she says. She knows that they can, or at least could, if they weren't swaying in their seats slightly. This is more for them than it is for her. You should be able to give a stern word in privacy back there. The men are still picking out machines from what she can discern. They'd have no problems with the element of surprise. "I'm gonna speak to the head honcho." She jabs her thumb at the entrance that Ronnie just stepped out of. She notices in the reflection of the half-finished third picture that she has a grin on her face going from ear to ear. As she sinks back to her own body and reality, she realises that she's never felt better. The crew nod in unison. Without saying anything, they all stand up, cracking their knuckles. They stride into the darkness of the gaming room with a purpose. Just before Chimera stands, she sees them follow the two men around a corner behind a cluster of slot machines. One of them reaches into his pocket and flips out his switchblade. Chimera's beast roars with anticipation. She steps outside into the deserted car park. Ronnie is standing across the dark expanse, leaning against a chain-link fence under the harsh glow of a streetlight. As Chimera approaches, takes a drag from his cigarette, eyes her up and down, lingering for just slightly too long on her chest and waist, and smiles. "Having a good night, sweetheart?" "Not as good as the Pie supporters, that's for sure," Chimera says. She hears another cheer from the back of the pub. She can hear her beast in her mind, gesturing wildly at the man, the open space and the opportunity. She hides a grimace as best she can and tries to keep it in check. "This has to be clean. You're stronger than he is. You've got the upper hand," she silently tells herself. "Don't fuck this up. Gotta get him distracted. Can't believe I didn't check for cameras. God damn it. Need to make sure nobody sees. I don't suppose I could bum a smoke off you, could I?" She turns on the charm, making puppy dog eyes. Just a quick look should do. "Ah, sure thing, babe," the piece of shit says, lowering his gaze from her as he fishes in the pocket for his cigs. "Bombers supporter, then?" "Oh, just anyone who isn't the Pies." Chimera dashes a quick look to see if anyone is walking past, or if there are any cameras immediately around. She makes a wits awareness check, quickly scanning the car park and the street beyond the chain-link fence. She spots a single camera above the pub's entrance, recording anyone who goes in and out. There's no way its field of view covers the far side of the car park. She's got him right where she wants him. Ronnie holds out a cigarette and a lighter in his left hand. "So, come here often, babe?" "Sometimes," says Chimera. She takes the cigarette, puts it in her mouth, but can't bring herself to flick the lighter. Fire. "Only when I find something to take my mind off things." She puts on a sullen expression, finds herself a little confused at how the expression makes her feel. She shouldn't be frowning. What's that about? This is supposed to be an act for distraction. Why does this make her feel so anxious? Whatever. As long as she can put off lighting this stupid thing. "What's the matter, babe?" asks the piece of shit. "Need help lighting it?" And that's it. Chimera can't take it anymore. Who's he to offer her a helping hand? Him! After all he's done. All the people he's killed through his terrible choices. Fuck this guy, making a gesture like that. People like him don't do that. It makes her sick. She bites down on the cigarette, ruining the filter and bending it irreparably. She feels a different kind of fire welling up inside her. The beast is laughing at her, filling her with rage and venom. It's now or never for this asshole. It's now or never for her. "I need help from you, you worm!" She spits at him, her face contorting in anger. Spinning on the spot to meet him face to face, she grabs him by the throat and presses him up against the wall. "You're gonna suffer for what you've done." Using her inhuman strength, she slides him across the bricks and throws him down against the ground, dragging him around the corner by the collar. She can barely keep the beast at bay as it seems to thrash in ecstasy, finally feeling the hunt of something meaningful. "What the?" the man splutters as she hurls him against the fence. "Junkie bitch!" And that's all it takes. The beast begins to scream in gleeful anger. Chimera feels a righteous fury building within her. She rolls for anger frenzy. Only 2 successes. 1 short, unfortunately. His words cut into her like a knife. Junkie bitch. Her past coming back to haunt her. Images of her life, the last days before her death, flood through her mind. Junkie bitch. How dare this scrap of scum judge her after everything he's done, after preying on people just like what she used to be. The anger overwhelms her. The man whimpers pathetically, opening his mouth to say something. But Chimera doesn't hear it. All she can hear is the beast. She slams her fist into the man's neck, and then, as he slumps down, she starts to kick his ribs like a madwoman. Each gasp of pain sounds like sweet music. She makes a strength plus brawl plus potence check. It's a messy critical of 6. She loses herself in the anger, the fury. For a brief second, she hears her sire's voice in her head. Thomas Roth telling her to stop, telling her to think and make sure what she's doing is the right choice. But it's gone in an instant, and she relishes in the pain she's inflicting, her smile growing wider with each bone she breaks. She doesn't even notice when the man's pathetic whimpering turns to laboured breathing, or when that breathing is finally snuffed out with one last kick to the side of his neck. The crack of his spinal column jolts Chimera back to reality. The beast purrs, satisfied, subdued, and at her feet lies the bloodied, broken body of what was once Ronnie White. "Holy shit!" comes a voice from behind her, half terrified and half in awe. You turn around to see the crew staring at Chimera's handiwork. Guys inside reckon they didn't know anything about drugs, but, Another crew member spits at the body. "Prick deserved it." All Chimera feels is red. This isn't what she intended to do, but it feels so much better than it should have. One less stain on the street, but one more on her clothes. It's hard to tell what was the beast and what was her. They seemed to work together in some twisted harmony, enjoying every moment they could savour together. She swears she felt her heart beating during the entire fleeting sequence and catches herself feeling proud of what she's done, but a little ill at the same time. Everything is coming back into balance. Everything makes sense. She is at the top of the food chain, and nobody's going to be hurt by Ronnie White again. Wiping her hands on her latex leggings, she finally notices the others. They seem pretty satisfied too. At least that's what she sees. "It's not over yet," she says. "His stash will still find its way onto the street through his chicken shit friends." She isn't sure if what she's about to say next is necessary, but the words have already left her mouth. "We gotta hit his house next. Burn that shit to the ground." "Alright, come on, says one of the crew, already running to the van. "We gotta get out of here before the coppers show." Chimera tears herself away from the mess at her feet and follows the others to the car, scrambling into the back seat just as the engine roars to life and the van screams out onto the street. Now it's time to deal with Ronnie's stash. She grabs her phone to double-check the address and finds a message from Prefix blinking on the screen. The euphoria she's feeling drains in just the time it takes to read the contents, leaving her feeling sick. "Wait, Chimera? I think we ask around a bit more first. Found this and it looks a lot more like who you're after." Prefix has attached a link to a Facebook profile for a guy called Ronnie James. The photo is of a man with a face like a rat and obvious prison tattoos down his right arm. His latest status simply says, "Fuck the police, fucking pigs," and links to a paywalled news article about a Ronald James fronting the magistrate's court for ice trafficking. In Chimera's gut, the beast laughs, taunting her. She got the wrong guy tonight. Wasn't it fun? Everything stops. The car, her thoughts, maybe even time. The moment stretches on to infinity and back again. Nothing moves. Chimera is alone in space. Nothing makes sense. It feels as though she is alive again, but thrown into the Antarctic Ocean as the cold, icy depths strangle her and she sinks far, far, deep down into the center of the earth. She's alone with her thoughts here. For a time, she looks at her life and her choices that led her here. Silas, her shitty boss, her boyfriend, getting her to partake in his destructive drug habit. And the night of her death, she places them on the scales. Victories against the scum of the streets in recent years and the smiles of her compatriots. People walking in parks, parties attended with nobody overdosing. She places them on the other side of the scales. The last 10 minutes play on repeat, forcing her to watch with her eyes open, hearing the crack and crunch of an innocent man's body filtered out in the heat of the moment. The elation at her own power earlier this night, the thrill of making a real difference, to stop anyone ending up like her. Nobody should end up like her. She recognizes the beast's whispers entering her mind, and she understands immediately. Is still hungry, angry, and ravenous for more destruction. Her own psyche responds in kind, singing to the music of the beast. Being like this doesn't just make her powerful, it makes her dangerous. There's something very wrong here. In what feels like an instant, all the sound around Chimera returns, and it rings through her ears loud like a gunshot, and she vomits all the beer of the night up in the back seat of the car. A few nights later, Vince's CRX is cruising 20 over the limit, and that has surprisingly little influence on his motor skills. Within 10 seconds, Chimera's phone lights up with an address, a few minutes' walk from Hope's Haven. On the other side of town, Chimera eagerly pulls her phone out of her pocket and reads over Vince's text. She doesn't recognize the location, but she knows the street. With some pep back in her step, she makes her way to the meeting point. On another night, Vincent would be feeling the urge to skid to a stop, but he's not in the mood for showing off. The car pulls up beside Chimera smoothly. As she climbs in, the stereo softly whispers in a language Chimera doesn't recognize. Italian community radio. It's not what Vince is into, but he finds the rhythms of a language he can barely speak calming. "Hey, Vince," says Chimera, "is your radio broken or something? I haven't heard someone listen to AM since the 90s. Vince sighs. He leans forwards and turns the knob on the dashboard, silencing the Italian. "Get in. Buckle up." Chimera scowls. "I don't really have time, dude. Hope's got me on overwatch over her haven in case Spider shows up, and it's looking kinda dicey." "Oh my god, you fuckhead," thinks Vince. He looks Chimera in the eyes, gaze affixed. He's not taking no for an answer. Chimera rolls her eyes, leans into the passenger seat of the car, casting long dark shadows across the dimly lit cabin, and reaches for the seatbelt. "Right, fine, you dumbass. I guess I've got some time." As Vince watches her slide the buckle into its cradle, he smiles. "Thanks, mutt." The car pulls out, locked on, a fourth of the limit. Fuel economy be damned. Unsure of what's come over herself, Chimera is suddenly completely taken with Vince. His presence over her, his entrance, lacing the word mutt with his power. She's utterly transfixed, but has no idea. Chimera's not sure if it's the sound of the car or the assertiveness of its driver, but Vince looks different in here. "So where are we going, Mr. Stuntman?" she teases playfully. She wasn't imagining it back in the bar when she met him. He really is extremely stylish and cool. "I know a place. You'll like it," says Vince. He doesn't mean it as an instruction, but Chimera will surely take it as one. "You said you had something for me?" "Oh, I'm sure I will," Chimera beams. "Oh, let me just..." She reaches down into the footwell of the passenger seat and unzips the duffel bag that Hope entrusted her with, and the shapes and gleams of serious hardware glint from within. She rummages around for a second. "Oh, here it is. Last magazine of incendiary rounds Hope could spare." Zipping it up, she flips the magazine around in her hands, unsure if she's having fun with it or trying to impress Vincent. "Not that you'd need more than this, right? I saw you with the stake launcher when we took in Patient Zero." Vince doesn't take his eyes off the road. "Yeah, that'll come in handy. Throw it in the console that there's a false bottom." It's not paranoia if there's a good reason for it. Chimera fumbles around trying to find it, but eventually pops the secret compartment open and lets out a little, "Oh, so cool," as she drops the magazine in. The corner of Vincent's mouth curls up at the remark. Chimera's glad she came along for this little outing with Vince. Her gut instinct was right. She needs a little something to take her mind off everything going on at the moment, especially the thing with Ronnie White. Never mind, she tells herself, not thinking about that. All thoughts of the man she beat to death in the TAB parking lot pushed aside as easily as the console slides back down into place. The street lights look a little different to Chimera now. She's riding with Vincent. Chimera's sure that Hope will be alright for a little while without her. After all, Hope has Emily set up at a motel right near the Footscray Harbour, keeping an eye out for Spider's goons. And it's not too often that Chimera gets to go out with Vincent. Hope would surely understand. She reaches into the duffel bag at her feet once again, exclaiming, "Oh, that's right." She pulls out 3 sharp pieces of dirtied steel, railway spikes that have been whittled down with painstaking effort into a size that will allow them to fit into Vince's stake launcher. Vince whistles at the sight of the stakes. "Those look vicious, Mutt. You didn't make those specially for me, did you?" Chuckling, Chimera responds, "No. My sire, Roth, made these. I could probably learn, though. Be careful with them. Don't want to get yourself." She doesn't mention that she snuck them out of her sire's haven without telling him. He won't mind, as long as they're being used for a good cause. Vince takes one of the railway spikes and tosses it up, sending it spinning through the air. The show-off. It lands safely in his hands, but he fumbles slightly. He tries to play this off as being part of the act. I'm sure I'll be fine," he says. Chimera snorts. "Very fancy. I feel safer already." But it's true. She does feel safer right now. It's not long before the CRX pulls into a park. Well, a no-standing zone. Good enough, Vince thinks. The street around the car hums with activity. It's been a long year, but Melbourne's nightlife is quickly returning to its former glory. A short walk leads to a creaky set of stairs and the distinct scent of improperly treated wood and several decades of fluid damage. An estate agent would describe the ambience as homely. A safety inspector would describe it as a health risk. "Welcome to Limbo," says Vince. That's how he describes it. Chimera stares at the flight of steps in front of her, uncertain. Really? Here? Are you sure? This dive reminds her of some of the places she'd gotten the jump on perverts she'd been tracking. But the moment passes quickly, and she bows, gesturing to the abyss. After you? That was stupid, she thinks. Of course he's sure. He said she'd love it. Vince leads the way silently, taking a seat at the ramshackle, dirty bar inside. The venue's atmosphere is more vibrant than its run-down decor would suggest. By all rights, one could call it a dive, but if you called it that, you'd be making yourself out to be an awfully poor sport. Folks from all walks of life mill about. Most walks, but there's only room for one yuppie in this town. The bartender nods to Vincent. Chimera's seen his face before, might even know his name. His nature is plain to see. Got yourself a new friend, Vince. Vince smiles. My losing streak is finally over. The bartender laughs, and Vince turns to Chimera. So, Mutt, what do you drink? To Chimera, the atmosphere is strange and oppressive, but doesn't seem to matter right now. Normally, she just drinks whatever is on tap to help keep her cover, to enforce the masquerade, but she hasn't been to a bar for leisure since, well, no, now's not the time to get lost in that. I'll have whatever you're having, she replies sweetly. To reasons beyond her ken, she desperately wants Vince to approve of her, and this makes her blood flow through her veins again, activating her blush of life, almost unconsciously, bringing colour back to her face. The leathery scales that still linger on her cheeks, a reminder of the frenzy that brought Ronnie White to the end of his life, blend in a little better this way too. Vince raises an eyebrow. You sure? He's a little disappointed. Chicks dig when you match their order. He's also a little concerned how she'll feel about his usual. I mean, unless there's something you'd think I'd like better, she says. Something in the back of her mind bristles at his response, but it's so far away she can barely feel it. Oh, I just thought you, of all people, would have a preference, says Vince. Whatever. He nods to the bartender, and the bartender gets to work. The drinks look fresh, colourful, and was that hot sauce the bartender slipped in? Before long, 2 Bloody Marys glisten on the counter. The irony isn't lost on me, says Vince. Fucking good, though. Makes you feel alive. So does the real blood he's forcing through his atrophied veins. Hunger nips at his heels. The drinks on the counter sparkle, reflected in Chimera's eyes, or maybe they reflect the sparkle in her eyes. Either way, she's not seen this particular cocktail before and is bubbling with excitement to try it, especially at Vince's behest. A toast, I think, to new friendships and to burying the past. The glass is perched delicately between her fingers as she nods to Vincent and takes a rather large swig. It burns on the way down, either from the hot sauce or the alcohol, and tastes strangely tangy. It's a flavour she could get used to. She's so fucking stupid, Vince laughs to himself, and it's genuine. Look at you go. Most people balk at these. Then again, most bartenders suck at making them. You're supposed to take little sips, not drink the whole thing in one go. It's why I drink whiskey everywhere else, he says, giving a look to the bartender behind the counter. They seem to stand up taller. Chimera smiles approvingly at the bartender. So, she thinks, this is where Vince must spend his time. Surely it's not just for the drinks, though. You're full of surprises, Vince. The rest of the drink is calling her name, and she swirls it to create a tiny vortex, downing it in one go. The last few days have been a complete mess, but this is just what the doctor ordered. You were right. I do love this place. Vince is a little more than chuffed at that. Didn't expect she'd be quite so receptive, he thinks. He's still got it. He cocks a sideways grin at Chimera, making sure to show his absolutely pristine fangs. Then it hits him. A complete mess? Really? You mean with patient zero? I thought things went pretty well, all considered. I mean, says Chimera, things with you guys went super well, and you were amazing. She deflects, entranced by the gleam of his teeth. It's not that easy to just put it out of mind, but when she's with him, it's easier somehow. Her eyes are pulled to the empty glass, staring back at her. Drinking was better while alive. Looking up at Vincent, Chimera feels restless. She doesn't want the conversation to be about her right now. So, is that bartender the only attraction of this delightful little bar? Vince rolls an insight check. He gets a critical 6. It's obvious to him something's on Chimera's mind. I love how it sparkles, he says, and he looks Chimera dead in the eyes, placing his hand on hers firmly. There's something you're not telling me. It feels like Chimera's heart stops. She feels the touch of Vince's hand. She doesn't want to make this uncomfortable or rebuff him, but this isn't the time or the place. There is nothing more unpleasant than the idea of confronting what she's done for a second time tonight. Once was enough. This was supposed to be an escape. She sighs and stops fidgeting, resigning herself to his stare. It's more piercing than usual. Well, after that job with you guys, I ran into some trouble. It's okay though, really. It's not okay, but this is making it worse. The sooner it's over, the better. Some asshole's giving you shit, says Vince. You can deal with that. He means it as an assurance, not a dismissal. Chimera reaches forwards, takes Vincent's hand tightly in hers and looks him back in the eyes, doing her best to feign confidence. It's nothing I can't handle. She smiles, but it feels empty. She just hopes it doesn't look that way. Vince rolls for insight again. 5 successes. Chimera's not very good at lying. He sees easily through her facade. And she's not sure what's more frightening, that he can read her so easily, or that he seems to care. The look Vincent gives her makes it clear he knows that she's hiding something. He waves the bartender over. Something stronger. It won't make a difference, but the sentiment is timeless. An unfamiliar liquid drizzles its way into a shot glass, and Chimera finds the flow mesmerizing. It makes her feel hungry in a way that she cannot quite identify. It won't do much beyond the ritual of drinking or the extremely kind gesture, but it makes the part of her consciousness that feels human still glow. Pushing her hair back in preparation, she brings the glass to her mouth and shoots it down, savoring the feeling. Habitually, she throws the glass to the ground and it explodes in a sudden crack into dozens of smaller pieces of shot glass. She turns back to Vince, feeling renewed for the experience, her normal mischief returning to her eyes. Breaking things is a fantastic way to blow off steam. Let's do something fun. She lets the words linger in the air as she says them. Vince guffaws. Don't tell me you're Russian. He doesn't acknowledge the irritated look of the bartender. Nothing a couple of 20s can't smooth over. Alright, what do you have in mind, Scaly? Actually, you know what? I could really use a bite, Vincent says as he stands. The speed that Chimera stands up from her stool knocks it onto the floor. Plans are never her strong suit, but enthusiasm is always the flavour of the month. Time to beat this dump. Vince is very sweet to have brought her here, but being cooped up is doing her head in. Well, let's go then! She grabs his hand and starts making for the door before she stops and turns back. Wait. You got a thing, don't you? You gotta have specific prey. You're not the rat guy, are you? She tries to keep that hushed as much as she can. She might make a ruckus, but she still has tact. or so she thinks. Vince rolls his eyes. He chucks a few $20 notes on the bar, doesn't stop to count them. It'll be enough for the drinks and to replace the glass. You really have a lot to learn about me, mutt. Vince begins to roam the streets aimlessly. To Chimera, the look of determination on his face and the way he silently judges every person who passes by tells her he knows what he's doing. But Vince is good at putting up a facade of confidence. He's never hunted with another kindred before, and he has almost no clue as how he's going to do this without freaking her out. In the back of his mind, the beast roars with impatience. "What are you doing?" it shouts. "That one there! You can have her! Or him! Or him! Why are you drawing this out longer than you need to?" He's tempted multiple times to just shoo Chimera away and head to one of his usual haunts. Pick up a pretty young thing who doesn't know what she's doing with life. But he's trying to make an impression here. After nearly an hour wandering through the rack, the two find themselves drawing dangerously close to the innermost edge of the Camarille's domain. For the briefest moment, Chimera's beast stirs, unsettled, all too aware that if the Cams see her, she's dead. But Vince doesn't seem to notice. He continues his stoic, determined patrol. It almost reassures her. He wouldn't put her in danger, she realises. He knows most of his people are at Elysium, scared off the streets by the Second Inquisition's plague. Finally, Vince stops without warning. He silently points ahead at a tan-skinned man in a designer tracksuit handing a small plastic baggie to a strung-out yuppie in exchange for a handful of 100s. He flashes Chimera an excited look and then, without waiting for her response, strides confidently up to the dealer. "Hey mate, need anything to help your party?" asks the dealer as Vince approaches. As he reaches into his pocket to produce his wares, Chimera catches him eyeing her up and down. He quickly looks away as soon as she notices. "And a pretty young thing you've got there," he uses. "You're a lucky guy." "Indeed," says Vince, motioning to Chimera to wait for his signal. He moves closer to the man until they are almost face to face, then flashes a charming smile. "And she's down to party, if you know what I mean." The dealer nods excitedly. "Oh, I think I do, man. So, what are you looking for? Ice? Spank? Eckies?" Vince looks around, and he points to a nearby alleyway blanketed in the shadow of a towering skyscraper. "Mind if we do this away from prying eyes, and then my lady friend will tell you what she's after?" The dealer shrugs. "Sure thing, He looks over at Chimera. "You sure she's down to..." "Definitely," says Vince. He begins to lead the dealer into the alleyway. Chimera follows, clenching her fists. As soon as everyone steps into the shadows, kindred and kind alike, the dealer turns around, an eager smile on his face. "Okay, how do you want to..." His smile changes to an expression of shock as Chimera rushes forwards, delivering a punch to his solar plexus, sending him flying into a nearby dumpster. He lies there on the dirty concrete, screaming obscenities as his hand fumbles for something in his jacket. The shape of a semi-automatic pistol is visible just under the hem of his Melbourne Storm t-shirt. "Don't even think about it," spits Chimera as she smashes his rib with another punch. The man screams in pain, his gun clattering away on the concrete. Vince and Chimera exchange one last excited look before they move in. 20 minutes later, they emerge from the alleyway, holding hands. Their beasts purring in unison, no longer hungry. "Holy shit," says Chimera. "You see how far he flew? That's gonna be a new record for me." She shadow boxes on the spot, teeth chattering lightly. "You're a savage, mutt," says Vince, genuinely impressed. "That was so fucking cool, Vince," says Chimera. She's feeling better, but she's not aware that this is mostly because of the cocaine now flowing through her veins. "Dude was so scared. I can't believe he fell for it. What a fucking moron." She starts to trip over her words a little. Now this is a way to feel better. Nothing better than letting your fists do some therapy. She keeps shadowboxing, watching her footwork. Suddenly, a flash of memory shoots into her mind. The sound of Ronald White's skull being crushed under her boot. That makes her wince and tighten her teeth. She's gotta keep moving, gotta keep busy. Think of something else, she tells herself. It's working so far. And always does. Honestly, Vince is a little freaked out by Chimera. He likes that hope. She's so freaky it spoils the fun. Sylvia fucked off. Derek is the wrong kind of scary, but Chimera, to him, she's just the right amount of spice. He chuckles under his breath as he walks beside Chimera. That fucker thought he could have his girl. Had it coming, though. Still bouncing, Chimera grabs Vince's hand and sets off in another direction, but again stops herself before she gets far. It's all getting to her head. He's all she's been able to think about all night apart from... No, never mind. Vince is entirely captivating. A small voice in her mind begs her to go back to setting up and watching out for Hope, but this is so much more important. This is where Vincent is, and Vincent is fun. Turning back to him, she buries her face in his chest and hugs him tightly. He can make it all better, she thinks, if she stays with him. Vince holds her head in his hands, pulls her in tight, his fingers straddling her hair. She thinks the world of him, and that feels fucking amazing. Finally, God, finally, he can have what he deserves. Plenty more of that to come, he tells himself. To Chimera, the moment is wonderful. She feels at peace for the first time in days, until it starts to hit her hard. The cocaine, that is. Chimera feels nothing but a flurry of ideas and energy, and her teeth chatter like they did back in the streets in winter when she was alive. Everything is so good, and so much. Come with me! Excited and giddy, she stumbles over her own feet as she leads Vince back into the alleyway. Fumbling through the dealer's coat, she takes his gun and punches the unconscious man across the face an extra time for good measure, shaking. Between the lack of blood and the beating he's already taken, he doesn't even register. He's frothing at the mouth, barely conscious. Without asking, she tucks the gun into Vince's waistband with no regard to the safety and storms off with him in tow to the nearby parking lot. You're a crack shot, right? Vince pulls the gun out, switches on the safety, and checks the magazine capacity. Missing one bullet. Ominous, he thinks. He chuckles at Chimera's giddy demeanour before following after her, gun stowed inside his jacket. Yeah, you could say that. He is in reality merely decent. He's only been to the range a few times. But so far, it's got the job done. Grinning gleefully, Chimera finds a small recycled plastic bench behind an old liquor store and parks Vincent on it, jumping up on top and excitedly looking around the car park, ensuring that nobody is there. For some reason, she has to squint a lot more to see clearly. The street lights are bright tonight, but the streets are pretty much deserted. There are a number of large recycling dumpsters on the curb, and before Vincent can say anything, Chimera's leaning over into one, rummaging for bottles. A few minutes later, she pops out with a collection of empty beer bottles. The VB labels faded. As she meanders back to Vincent, waiting patiently, a few of them drop from her grasp and clatter to the ground, but she doesn't seem to notice. Show me what you can do, big shot, as she sets them up. You're a living meme, you know that? Says Vince. Chimera pouts at his comment. Don't be a dickwad. Hey, I got an idea. I'll throw a bottle at you. Vince's inhibitions would normally stop him from agreeing to such foolishness. Shooting off a few rounds in a car park in the inner suburbs at 4 AM is a quick way to get arrested. But there's something about Chimera that makes him want to show off. So he indulges her in her impromptu life is strange reenactment. Vince scoffs. Can a dickwad do this? Bang, bang, bang! Vince fires off 3 rounds, easily hitting the beer bottles that are lined up on the fence. Then he winks at Chimera and, taking the signal, she raises her arm and hurls a bottle into the air. Vince brings the handgun to eye level once again, squints down the sights and fires. Bang! He rolls composure plus firearms. He does very badly. The bottle sails through the air. It hits Vince in the face, shattering on impact. He takes a point of superficial damage, and Chimera loses it. This is the funniest thing she's ever seen. She doubles over in laughter, wheezing. Vince wipes the blood from his cheek, trying to hide his embarrassment. Oh yeah, real smooth! Chimera jeers in between fits of howling. She is more sure than ever she made the right choice to hang out with Vincent tonight. Unaware, she never got to make a choice at all. Fuck you, says Vince. He tries to make it sound like a playful retort, but there's an edge of anger to his voice. He's fuming in his gut. Bitch made him look like an idiot. I'll fucking get it next time. Oh yeah? Chimera attempts to climb up atop the car, accidentally crushing its windscreen in the process with a crunch. She doesn't notice. Grabbing a bottle, she stands up as straight as she can and puts it on her head, balancing it gingerly and failing. It tumbles and lands on the ground, shattering instantly. Fucking... God damn it! She reaches for another bottle and, with a wobbly composure, manages to make it sit still on top of her head this time. Won't miss now, will you? If she was alive, her heart would be beating out of her chest. It was the best idea she's ever had, standing, wavering, on top of this random car in the car park, daring Vince to shoot at the bottle on her head. Oh God, thinks Vince. Don't move a muscle. Vince takes aim, steady this time. He can't afford to make an ass of himself. His dignity is at stake. And Chimera too, he guesses. He rolls composure plus firearms. And Chimera rolls dex athletics to dodge. She didn't expect him to take the bait. Vince takes a moment to line up the shot as closely as he can. Seconds drag on, feeling like an eternity. Finally, he fires. Bang! Chimera's survival instincts kick in. As soon as she sees the muzzle flash, she leaps down off the car. The bottle tumbles off her head, smashing on the asphalt. Vince's bullet zooms through the air where the bottle was only seconds ago, and slams into a power transformer on a streetlight just beyond. Sparks fly off the metal. Suddenly an electric alarm pierces the silence of the light. Ah, you wuss! You ruined my shot! Chimera pouts. I didn't think you'd actually take it! Then she bursts out laughing again. Dude, you suck at this. I'm taking your steak launcher off you. Her eyes are wide, wider than they should be under the moon and the ambient streetlight. She skips over to Vince and hugs him again, nesting her face deeply. Grinning from ear to ear, she looks up and looks him in the eyes. He's stunning and caring and so much fun. This feels right. Reaching her hand to his, she takes the gun out of his hand and hops back quickly, almost falling backwards. Oh, also, I'm going to hold on to this for safekeeping. It's only then, as she slides the gun into the hem of her leggings, that she hears the alarm klaxons. Oh shit, did we do that? Distant sirens begin to bleed into the still ringing alarm. Upon recognizing the sound, Chimera panics. Vince, we've got to get out of here. We got to go. Where's your car? This is so bad. Oh God, oh God. She paces back and forth on the spot, losing herself to the panic. This is unusual for her. Not the mood swings, but the panic. The cocaine, she suddenly realizes. Vince always makes the vessels do a line when he feeds. She's off her face. And the cops are coming. Alright, this is fine, says Vince. Just stay calm, walk away normally. We didn't do anything. He's audibly stressed, but he's keeping himself together. He notices his anxiety. That's odd for him. Did the guy they drank from take too much blow? No, he thinks he portioned it out himself. Whatever, worst case, wipe some cop's memories. Same old, this is fine. But fuck, why is his chest so tight? The sirens are far enough away that they could both leg it now and not have to deal with any trouble, and yet Vince is restless. Even as he leads Chimera out of the car park and into a side street to get away, the tightness in his chest doesn't subside. If anything, it gets more and more omnipresent as the alarms and sirens recede into the distance. Hell, in any other situation, Vince would wait for the cops to arrive and send them on their merry way. But beside him, Chimera's losing it, desperate to get away, and for some reason he doesn't want for her to have to deal with any more stress tonight. Chimera sits on the curb in the alley, flinching at the sirens fading into the distance, mumbling to herself with her head in her hands. A new idea crosses her mind. This is better than the last one. She smiles. "Vince, give me your keys." She doesn't seem to be upset anymore, but determined. That, and still vibrating from all the coke in her system. Vince cocks an eyebrow. "Why? Your car's totally faster than these cops." She seems to not comprehend that the sirens are getting quieter, not louder. Vince is baffled, but the acknowledgement of his sweet wheels perks him up a bit. "Well, yeah, it is fast. What about it?" "Well, we're being hunted down by cops now, and who knows how many there are. We gotta outrun them." "I can do it," says Chimera eagerly. She seems to not consider that Vince is probably a perfectly competent driver. Better than her. Or that it's just one patrol car investigating the gunshots in the car park. The coke is surging through her system. "Wait a minute," says Vince. "Hunted? How do you figure? We set off all those alarms, and you heard the sirens?" She's starting to look desperate, almost panicked again. Tugging at his sleeve, she pleads, "Come on, Vince, we gotta go." Vince shakes his head. The annoyance is starting to return. "We did, and then we left. Now they're gone, and have no idea we did anything. Are you feeling all right, Mutt?" "Fantastic. Why?" She stammers, her teeth chattering. It's the truth. This is easily the best Chimera's felt in days, maybe even years. It might be the drugs talking, but there is something about Vince. She feels almost invincible when Vince is by her side. Being led back to the car, Chimera can't help but feel sheepish. Of course Vince should be the one driving. He's the best driver there is, and there's no way the cops could bring them down. Not together. As they climb into the car, Vince grips the wheel, turns the key in the ignition, and the CRX's engine and turbocharger roar to life. He looks over at Chimera. She's peering out of the window, still looking for cops, almost bouncing with excitement. Vince sighs, looks at himself in the mirror on the dashboard, and rolls his eyes. He makes the surprisingly mature choice to head back to Hope's Haven without much fuss, to get Chimera home. She's had a lot of fun tonight, and he knows that she's reached her limit. He does pay Chimera some lip service. I think we lost him," he says confidently. "Don't worry." A week passes. Chimera's still riding high on the adrenaline of the last few nights. She and the coterie fought side by side against a Zemise fleshcrafter, faced down a pack of lupines, and escaped to tell the story, and bent the prince's favour to their will, even as the Primogens sneered. Being part of a group who can get things done and effect real change in the city has lit the fire in Chimera, and seeing Vince dominate the prince's court, remaining cool as always, even in the face of true evil, has fueled it even more. She's had the memory of the events leading to her embrace lingering in the back of her mind for years now. The cold metal of the knife as that bastard held it to her throat. the utter disgust that gripped every fibre of her being as his penis pressed into the back of her leg, his quiet, emotionless voice asking her to take off her clothes, as perfunctory as if he was asking her the time, and the aftermath, everything that followed. The sharp pain of the blade sliding into her windpipe. After he was done, her vision beginning to waver and fade as she bled out on the asphalt of the basketball court. And then, just as she thought she was a goner, as the last drops of blood leaked out of her broken body, the sweet, metallic taste of Thomas Roth's vitae dropping onto her tongue. If there's one thing Chimera's wanted to do ever since she became one of the living dead, it's to get closure, vengeance, to find that monster and show him what she's become. She could never quite work up the courage to actually face it though, and until now it's been nothing more than a fantasy that she returns to each night as she awakens from the day sleep. But the fire's burning. As she awakens tonight, she's gripped by determination. She's going to do it. She's going to find him and fucking end him. Her beast purrs in anticipation and excitement. And tonight, she's happy to indulge it one last time. It's been years since the incident. She has no idea where to even begin looking for this man. She could start by heading over to the drug house, that old piece of weatherboard crap across the road from the basketball court where it happened. See who's still in the area and if they remember what happened that night. Or she could contact her vigilante friends, send a message to Prefix, and see what they turn up. But no, she thinks, shaking her head. This is her fight. This is something that they should have no part of. She's seen this enough in her dreams and idle thoughts not be afraid anymore. Probably. Her first inclination is to head to the basketball court and the derelict house in sequence, treating it as a trip down memory lane, as well as an investigation. Chimera's combat boots crunch along the gravel trail that leads to the derelict house on the edge of one of the western suburbs. The basketball court stands across the street, the asphalt decaying from years of neglect, overgrown with clusters of weeds. There's nobody in the court or on the street itself, but that's nothing to worry about. Nobody was ever stupid enough to be out at night in this part of town. When she stops at the end of the trail and stares up at the old house, a surreal feeling sets in. This is the place she's visited in her dreams hundreds of times since that night. And in her dreams, the shadows are cast longer, the darkness thicker. In person, though, the house looks almost normal. Just another sad building worn down by urban decay. She steps up onto the sagging wooden patio and walks towards the screen door. She hopes someone's home as she clenches her fist and raps on the door frame, paint peeling off at the touch of her knuckles. She's met with nothing but silence. She looks around. There's a ray of light peeking through one of the boarded-up windows, but nobody answers the door. Long shot to think a den like this would be used for anything other than suffering under its own weight, she thinks. That was never the real draw, though. She peers through the cracks to see if there's anything discernible left in the miserable corpse. Then, she kicks in the corpse's teeth by breaking down the door. The door's the only sturdy thing left of this worn-down structure, but it's no match for Chimera. With a crash, she forces it off its hinges and steps into the house. The light she could see is coming from the husk of the kitchen, directly to her right. A series of soiled-looking mattresses are scattered across the cracked tiles. The floor space that's left is covered in empty VB bottles and discarded syringes. Two malnourished figures, a man and a woman, sit against the back wall, staring silently into space in a drug stupor. These could be the same people Chimera used to shoot up with. She's not sure. It's been a long time, and after years of abject poverty and desperation, all these junkies start to look similar. She makes a wits investigate check to search the house for gang signs. deciding not to rouse these unfortunates yet. It's a shock that anyone's alive in here. There shouldn't be anyone here at all. Rather than disturb them outright, uncertain of whether they will ever wake, or perhaps be unhappy about an event such as that. She takes her time and traipses through the house, checking every nook and cranny. The two figures in the kitchen can wait. They clearly aren't going anywhere, perhaps ever again. She passes by the kitchen and continues down the hallway, checking out what lies forgotten in the bowels of this house. She finds each room in a state of disrepair. The plaster has been torn from the walls years ago, revealing the wooden skeleton underneath. Wherever it's still intact, it's covered in scuff marks and graffiti. In a cramped bathroom at the very back of the house, sinister brown stains gather around the baseboard of the counter, baked into the very tiles. Chimera doesn't need to imagine the dark times that transpired in this house. She lived them. Finally, she decides to cross the dirty laundry room and push open the wooden back door, stepping out into an overgrown backyard. Somehow, in stark contrast to the state of the house, the fences that mark the borders of the plot are still standing, sturdy even. She peers inside a half-collapsed garden shed, finds nothing but dust and spiders, and then returns to the house. As she trudges back through the knee-length glass, she notices a crude drawing of a skull spray-painted on the decaying weatherboard. It's a gang sign for sure. It's vaguely familiar to her, but she can't quite put her finger on it. Chimera rolls an intelligent, streetwise check. She adds her contacts to the pool. Chimera snaps a photo of the spray-painted skull with her phone, sends it to Prefix. As she waits for them to respond, she stands in the grass and stares at the gang sign, trying to remember where she's seen it before. She never ran with gangs, at least not breathing ones, but she's sure this particular sign is familiar. Come on, she urges her brain. Maybe it belonged to someone she bought drugs from. That doesn't really narrow it down. Chimera bought drugs from a lot of people. After about 10 minutes, she feels her phone vibrate in her hand. She looks down to see Prefix's reply blinking on the screen. "The hell are you doing in Skullcap territory, girl? Isn't that where it happened?" That's right, thinks Chimera. The Skullcaps. A small-time street gang, nothing more than petty thugs. But their stuff was cheap. She must have been trying to score cheap drugs that night. And that monster decided he wanted her to pay with something more than money. That narrows it down a lot. The Skullcaps only have one dealer in each neighbourhood. She just has to find someone who can point her to him. Pixels on the phone seem brighter than they should be as she gazes at the image. It burns a little bit. Flicking back to her conversation with Prefix, she makes sure to extend her appreciation and dissuade Prefix's concerns. Yeah, it is. Not going to go how it did last time, though. Smiley face. Especially given her new powers, she thinks to herself. He'll be eating his own teeth. Time to wake up the guests. She heads back into the dilapidated structure, hunches over the unfortunate forms heaped against the wall, and gives the man a bat across the cheek to try to rouse him. He looks up at her, bleary-eyed, mumbling something incomprehensible before nodding off again. "Hey!" Chimera shouts, grabbing the hem of the man's soiled shirt, shaking him. "I need to ask you something." He groans as he stares into her face, his clouded eyes confused. "Fuck off, bitch!" he slurs, the words only barely legible. Charisma and intimidation is rolled, as Chimera decides to cut through the shit. She gets a total of 4. This shit is exhausting already, and she has no time for it. It's all dragged on and on for what feels like forever, and every little hitch is starting to build into a frustration snowball. When a girl asks you a question, you answer it, she seethes, while reaching for a syringe off the floor to jab into the side of his leg. A percussive statement. The man wakes up in an instant. "What the actual fuck?" And he shouts as she raises the syringe and holds it above his thigh. As she slowly begins to bring it down, he squirms and shifts, and finally he cracks. Okay, he croaks. "Crazy bitch! The fuck you looking for?" Where'd you get your stash? Demands Chimera. Skullcaps? Remember, this is me asking politely, shithead. The man shifts his legs, trying to move them as far away from the tip of the syringe as possible. Oh, yeah, skullcaps, good shit, cheap shit, he splutters. With her free hand, Chimera grabs his knee and pulls his leg into place, holds it there, and then she presses the tip of the needle against his tattered denim. Who? She growls. Shit, I don't know, he screams, his eyes wild. Guy with the leather jacket, I don't know his name. Chimera snarls. She's getting nowhere with this shit. She raises the syringe and violently hefts it across the room. Suddenly, the spaced-out woman, only meters away, sighs. He goes by Cockroach, she says, rolling her eyes. Hangs out the park down Thames Road. Chimera turns to face the woman. Thank you. You've been very helpful. She turns back to the man. You could learn a thing or two from your lady friend. Have a good night. Rising to her feet, the determination sets in, like the warmth of a strong liquor going down. Cockroach. Piece of shit has a fitting name. Oh, and you might want to rethink your lives, etc., etc. Her hand flicks a wave as she turns to leave. As she steps out into the entrance hall, she frowns. That didn't feel so good. They didn't do anything to her, she realizes. And they're suffering too. She's letting her frustration, her need for vengeance leak out onto people who don't deserve it. Yet again, this has to end. And soon. The path she's on is too familiar for something so painful, and Chimera's tired of walking it. Clean up the loose ends, wrap up the bow, move on to something greener, something healthier, she tells herself. Once she's standing on the porch again, Chimera inhales deeply, sucking in the night air. It doesn't do anything. Her lungs don't work anymore, but it clears her head a little, allows her to reframe her mind to what she's going to do now. It's time to squash a cockroach. It's only a short walk from the derelict house to Thames Road, only a block or so away, and she can already see the park a few houses down. The wooden fence, a park bench, and a metal bin visible on the edge of the grass in the glow of a streetlight, and everything beyond, blackness. Chimera takes a moment, staring into the abyss, psyching herself up, and then she makes her way down the road, past the quiet houses, and steps into Cockroach's domain. She finds him chilling at a kid's playground a little ways down the dirt track that runs through the park. His raucous laughter disturbs the silence of the night as he and a couple of his mates huddle together under the flying fox, their phones creating an eerie blue glow around them. But it's enough for Chimera to make out Cockroach's face and his shiny leather jacket. It's the same face that's haunted her dreams for years. So anyway, this bitch says she don't have any money left, he says to his rapt followers, the sleaziest smile Chimera's ever seen plastered on his face. So I tell her, hey, that's okay. You can just suck me dick for it instead. Breathe in, breathe out, Chimera tells herself, just like you used to. She activates her toughness, feeling the blood harden in her vessels. They're mortals. They can't kill her. They sure can fucking try, though. She doesn't make any real effort to hide her presence as she wanders up the dirt track towards the group. They hear her boots crunching down on the dirt with each heavy footfall she makes. How could they not hear her? She's got a heavy weight on her shoulders, a weight she's looking to get rid of. The two skullcaps gathered around Cockroach turn around and face her. Hey, speaking of, one of them says, nudging Cockroach with his elbow. Look at this hottie walking around alone at night. Cockroach and the other skullcap laugh as Chimera steps up onto the bed of wood chips surrounding the playground. Cockroach greets her with that awful sneer. There's absolutely no sign of recognition on his face. Piece of shit doesn't even remember her. What's up, baby? What you looking for? Crack, heroin, weed? She doesn't hesitate. Chimera steps forwards and punches him directly in the face. She rolls a strength brawl check, getting a bonus die for surprising him. That's a 6. Nice. Chimera doesn't even justify him with a reply. This scumbag doesn't deserve one. She strides forwards, clenches her fist and slams it into his head. Something cracks and Cockroach stumbles backwards and trips over the edge of the slide. His body hits the ground with an audible thump, scattering wood chips into the air. As Chimera cracks her knuckles in satisfaction, Cockroach's mates reach into their pockets, pulling out narrow switchblades that glimmer in the moonlight. "You're fucking dead, bitch!" one of them screams as they both charge her. She decides to do a strength brawl and a dex athletics check at the same time, splitting her dice pool in half. Chimera's ready for them. Her beast roars, excited by the rush of blood. As the first guy charges her, she kicks out with her left leg, the metal tip of her combat boot shattering his rib. Then, as he doubles over in pain, dropping his knife, she steps forwards and smashes her fist into the side of his head, knocking him out cold. She hears the footsteps of the other guy running up behind her and whirls around just as he raises his blade. She bends her knees to leap out of the way, but she's a fraction of a second too late. With a cruel grin on his face, the thug plants his knife just under Chimera's breast, cutting through her vest and sticking in her flesh. Normally, this would be 3 points of superficial damage, but Chimera's toughness reduces it down to just 1. The man steps back, surprised to see Chimera still standing, let alone moving, with the switchblade sticking out of her chest. She takes a step towards him, his eyes grow wide with terror. What the fuck are you? Your buddy Cockroach is gonna find out, says Chimera, smiling. It feels so good to finally be doing this, like the sweetest dessert she's ever tasted in life. A grin beams on her face. Want to try again? I'm right here, tough guy. She beckons him towards her mockingly. As she beckons him, she's well aware of the beast rumbling in the pit of her stomach. She sees the arteries under the skin of his forearm throbbing as his heart pumps blood through them. But she doesn't want to feed on this guy, this nothing. She's saving her appetite for something, someone else. She makes a charisma intimidate check. She only gets 1 success, but that's all she needs after what this guy has already seen. The thug stares her down, eyeing the knife sticking out of her chest, and she can tell he's thinking of a million different half-brained ways to try and grab it. Then, he decides he'd rather go on living. Saying nothing, he simply nods and backs away. When he reaches the edge of the playground, he turns around and sprints into the night, screaming at the top of his lungs. Good riddance. Chimera steps over the other skullcap and kneels over Cockroach, lying unconscious in the dirt. He lets out a feeble moan, half awake, as she hoists him over her shoulder. Chimera's boots crunch on the decaying asphalt of the basketball court. It's been years since she was last here. Last time, a monster claimed a night, a life. Tonight, she wonders how things will be different. She takes her time, walking towards the basketball court, towards the edge of it, where the basketball ring sags, looks almost sad with its mouth hanging open. There's no real rush whatsoever. The night is brisk and still young. Native trees beyond the chain link fences are rustling lightly, twisting their way up to the power lines overhead, and a possum scampers along one, dangling from the front of a house. She leaves Cockroach lying at the base of one of the crooked basketball hoops, and then heads back inside the derelict house to grab a few supplies, an empty syringe and a brick. Rise and shine, sleepyhead! She bats Cockroach across the face a few times to get his attention. Cockroach stirs, his head lolling from one shoulder to the other. Moaning in pain, he raises a palm to the side of his skull, and then his eyes flutter open. He blinks once, twice, regaining his senses. He stares up at Chimera, a look of utter confusion on his face. What did you... Where am I? A good question, says Chimera, her voice dripping with venom. Gleeful venom. You're an insect. You're in my web. Now I'll ask you some questions. She puts a boot firmly on his stomach. Do you remember me? You killed me about 2 years ago to the day. At least she's pretty sure. He's going to confirm it. No repeats of last time. Nobody innocent. This isn't like Ronnie White. Not that he's not guilty of something. She heard him bragging to his goons. Cockroach moans once again, his head still throbbing with pain. Groggily, he shifts himself into a seating position and looks around, taking in the tufts of weeds, pushing through the asphalt, the sagging basketball hoops, the lopsided chain-link fence. And as the realization of where he is finally dawns on him, Chimera sees his eyes narrow in recognition. His bottom lip trembles. You? But I cut your throat. I watched you bleed out. It's what Chimera's been waiting for. She steps forwards and stamps her boot into his chest, knocking him flat on his ass again. Suddenly Cockroach is whimpering like a child. I had to do it. You said you'd remember my face. You would have gone to the coppers. It was your fault. That's the magic phrase. She smiles. That's a shame. I did remember your face, but I think the cops are on Smoko right now. She kneels on top of him, pressing his shoulders uncomfortably into the asphalt, using all of her weight, all of the weight she's carried for years. The rush of it all is making everything feel like it's spinning, despite all of her senses being long dead. Poor little insect. You know, I thought I might feel bad about this. I guess there's still time for that. You didn't seem to feel bad for me, though. She quickly rolls back upright, takes the switchblade out of her torso. A good tool, actually, she thinks. Might keep it. She holds it up to his throat. Why me? Cockroach sobs like a baby as he feels the cold steel against his skin. You were just a junkie, bitch, he whimpers. Nobody would have missed you. This is pathetic. There's no glory in this. The rush starts to fade. Instantly it's replaced with frustration and sadness. Junkie bitch? That's it? I went through all this because I was a nobody to you? A familiar sensation fills Chimera. It's never easy to figure out. It's like being on fire while being blind, lashing out inside her in strange ways, setting off emotional charges that catch her off guard. And then she cries. Cries for the first time in quite a while, red streaks flowing down her face while she meets his stare, dribbling onto his horrible jacket. God, you're pathetic. I can't believe you killed me. It's insulting. I can't believe you killed me, and... Being dead has its perks. As it's hard to vomit when your body produces no bile. Never a guarantee, but it does make it harder. The desire to punch Cockroach is mixed with disdain and horror. This isn't helping. None of this is helping. Chimera throws the syringe against the ground and it shatters into small shards. She looks Cockroach dead in the eyes, seeing the fear. It's probably what she looked like to him. So, Cockroach, I've got a problem. She can't have been the only one he did this to. Doing this as an act of pure revenge is distasteful, and she can barely stomach it. But if she lets him live, others will suffer. If I let you live, everyone you've hurt will never know justice. If I kill you, I don't know what it'll do to me. All I know is, if I don't, I'll never get you out of my thoughts. See, I'm stuck in a bad position here. I'm sure you can empathize. Cockroach doesn't say anything in response. He just continues his pathetic whimpering, his lips trembling. All it's doing now is making Chimera more annoyed. This moment has occupied her thoughts since the night of her embrace. She's waited for it, fantasized about it. And this is what it's all come down to. A pitiful wretch of a man cowering at his feet, tears running down his face. Don't Kill me, he finally murmurs. Why? What could you possibly do to make it up to me? I sure as shit don't know. Chimera stands up and looks down at him directly, hovering over his writhing form. You can't. Oh, I'll give you drugs, he stammers. That's what junkies like you want, isn't it? Anything you want for free. Chimera sneers. Bad answer. I can't take this. We're done here, and I'm not dealing with this anymore. What happens next is up to my friend. She clenches and unclenches her fists. It's muscle memory at this point to transform them into strange, bestial talons. She's beyond hungry at this point. Right on the edge, the beast is banging its head on the cage. Drink him, rip him, tear him, break him. Activating her feral weapons, her arms and hands disfigure horribly as they adjust to their usual, scaly, monstrous forms. The cage bars seem to hold on the beast for now. Gambling for Chimera is unfamiliar. It doesn't seem to make her feel like the folks she's seen at the TAB. She was expecting the beast to roar, to send her into frenzy, but she feels the same. Cockroach lets out a yelp like a wounded dog as he sees her hands twist and warp before his eyes. You're a monster! He screams. Likewise, bud, says Chimera. She steps over him again and crouches close to his face. I said it was up to my friend, but they said I should handle it. Oh well. Wasn't the fireworks show she wanted and the catharsis she sought, but he's seen too much, and honestly, he would have kept on ruining this nice neighborhood. You got real unlucky with who you killed, dipshit. The fire is coming back again. Maybe there will be some fireworks after all. The anger, pain, and stress of the last few years pours into her, and she bares her fangs, descending on him like a vulture. Might as well enjoy it. His terrified screams turn into yelps of pain, and as she plunges her talons into his torso, tearing through leather and skin, his blood begins to pour out in a torrent, and the beast purrs approvingly as the sweet smell of gore overwhelms Chimera's senses. As the dying man struggles to breathe, Chimera descends upon him. Within a few short minutes, the night is silence once more. The beast satisfied. The next little while's going to be confusing, Chimera thinks. She looks down at the mangled mess, the piles of bone and indistinguishable flesh that used to be Cockroach. Definitely wasn't what she expected, but it didn't feel as bad as she thought once she stopped looking at him. If anything, it was a little bit exciting. The note of not getting too close if she's going to indulge her emotions is filed away neatly. The night's whiplash from the cocktail of constant emotional shifts has left her exhausted. It's not as if she came through the night empty-handed, though. Perhaps revenge didn't feel as good as she expected it to, but Chimera learned something about herself, about how far she's willing to go and where she draws the line. She's not a monster, but the universe has an odd sense of humour. As she's disposing of Cockroach's body, heaving his carcass into a dumpster outside a milk bar, something drops into her hand from one of his jacket pockets. A set of keys, an address written on the plastic tag, somewhere close by. Curiosity brings her to the run-down little flat on a street corner in Sunshine that had been Cockroach's pad. His car, a rust-bucket Toyota Supra from the 1990s, sits still in the driveway. She's come this far, Chimera thinks, so she lets herself in with the keys. The place is sparsely furnished, but it's a hell of a lot better than a storage locker. She can already see her meagre possessions adorning the empty shelves of the living room.